Hey folks, welcome back to my channel. This is MahfuzVanGogh, your dredge guy, and today we are back to Blue Dredge, celebrating our very first anniversary here on this channel. Yeah, that's right. It's our first anniversary. This channel started 1 year ago when I had this impulse to post first video talking about my best creation at that time, Blue Dredge. A dredge deck with counterspells, with blue spells, with blue enablers. We have so many blue cards that Force of Will is more reliable than ever. We can even play like other tempo decks or control decks with days. And since we have Cabal Therapy and now we have Poxwalkers, 1 year ago we couldn't play Poxwalkers on Magic Online, and now we have access to Poxwalkers, I imagine Blue Dredge will be even better. After that first video that I posted here 1 year ago, it was a flawless victory. We didn't drop a single game. It was amazing. Blue Dredge was super competitive at that moment because the format was like a blue soup of decks. Blue soup of metagame was severely blue, I mean. And Blue Dredge shines against other decks with counterspells because they cannot counter forever, and our counterspells can counter their own counterspells, and we can win counter wars. It is super amazing when you have, for example, on the play, turn 1 basic island, so you are immune to Wasteland, and then you cast Careful Study, just a single cantrip, draw 2, discard 2. This for us is like drawing 4 cards, you know that. And then your opponent tries to force, but you have a daze, and then you just return your basic island to resolve your Careful Study, and your opponent is down 2 cards. It's such a great tempo play when you have it. And sometimes I even played in this previous year with 4 dazes in the main deck. But let's do a classic Blue Dredge build here with 3 dazes and 4 forces, like other tempo decks usually also have. Sometimes they play 3, sometimes they play 4 dazes. We are playing 7 counterspells in the main deck. About Therapy, Bridges, Poxwalkers, you already know how this works. We are back to Hogaak. Hogaak is interesting because you can trigger a Poxwalkers when you cast Hogaak. And Hogaak is super good against blue decks. They can even bounce your Hogaak, but usually Hogaak is there when you don't have your Poxwalkers yet. So you can maybe sacrifice an Amiibo with your Cabal Therapy, taking a counterspell from your opponent's hand. And then you have a couple of zombies. You use those zombies to cast Hogaak with Convoke without spending mana. And then you can use a second Cabal Therapy to make a couple more zombies and cast Hogaak again. But you have Poxwalkers. Poxwalkers is just a better Hogaak doing that. But Hogaak is an 8/8 trampler, and sometimes this is good enough to win games. And we still have 11 Dredgers and 12 enablers, but all of our enablers are blue, no Faithless Looting. That means we have access to Brainstorm. And Brainstorm, forgive me for this art. Actually, those are the only Brainstorms that I have here. I should invest a little bit to buy a full playset of better Brainstorms. But they do the same thing. They will draw 3 and discard. They draw 3 and put 2 cards back on the top of our library. And that's pretty interesting because Brainstorm is an instant. So playing Blue Dredge, sometimes you have different approaches to this deck. You can cast Brainstorm in response to a Fairy Macabre, in response to Surgical Extraction, but also in your upkeep, just to put back on top an Amiibo or a Bridge that you will reveal after your draw spell, because you have an extra dredging, and then cards that were dead in your hand can be used in the same turn, so you can win the game even faster. But Blue Dredge doesn't want to be fast. Blue Dredge wants to be a tempo/graveyard deck. So you will not play this like a combo deck. No sir, no madam. You will play this like a control or tempo deck, but slowly but surely winning the game. Sometimes you will have a turn 2 or turn 3 wins if you can sequence a Careful Study with a Brainstorm or 2 Brainstorms, or even a Cephalic Odyssey on turn 2. Sometimes you have enough tools to win the game. Your opponent can maybe concede. But it is so good to have access to Force of Will in a Dredge deck. Because now, if you are on the draw and your opponent has, I don't know, Oops of Spells winning on turn 1, you counter that. Turn 1 the One Ring or something that could win the game soon, you counter that. Turn 1 Gravedigger's Cage, you can counter that. So Force of Will is amazing. Of course, your opponents also will have Force of Will, so let's not celebrate too soon. Let's see how this deck will perform today. And what about our sideboard? This is almost the same deck that I played here 1 year ago. Let's compare a little bit. Instead of Poxwalkers, we had Icorids at that moment. Instead of the third Icorid, we had a Dread Return in our main deck, just to save some space in the sideboard. But we still had 5 bounce spells. 1 year ago, we didn't have Into the Flood Maw printed yet, but now we have, and Into the Flood Maw is a little bit better than Stern Dismissals, because it can bounce artifacts or everything, actually. Of course, your opponent will have a 1/1 fish, but usually that's not good enough to win the game for your opponent. And we had Grief in that format, but now Grief is banned. So I'm trying Unmask. Grief had a sweet synergy with Icorids, because it is a black creature, and also a sweet synergy with Otherworldly Gaze. I won many games with Grief being casted with Evoke on your first turn, and in response to Grief's death, you can cast Otherworldly Gaze, sometimes revealing Breach from Below, and even having 1 or 2 2/2 zombies on your first turn after removing a card from your opponent's hand. So Grief was super good, but now we don't have access to Grief. But I'm including 3 Unmasks instead, because Unmask is still a good card to search your opponent's hand for traps. You can use this as a tempo play when you're on the draw, or to just take your opponent's best card in their hand and swinging things on your favor. Unmask can take a combo piece, and you can even target Unmask. You can target yourself with Unmask. So maybe we can have, for the first time here on this channel, a situation where targeting you with Unmask to resolve a brainstorm will win the game with a dredge deck. That would be amazing and an achievement for us. Last year we also had access to Ashen Rider and a Line of the Void, but today I'm trying a split here, 2 Ley Lines and 2 Silent Gravestone, because Silent Gravestone can be really good against some decks in this metagame, even better than the Line of the Void sometimes. So let's do a split here. We have a single Curious Dismissal if we are including 5 bounce spells against the Line of the Void, and this is pretty much it. Ashen Rider can deal with problematic cards like Ensnaring Bridge or Tabernacle, or maybe just against Show and Tell to exile that Omniscience. Let's see if this deck still has legs 1 year after the first or very first video here on this channel, celebrating its anniversary. And if you're not subscribed to our channel yet, please do it now. We are, as this deck, we are doing the same thing. Slowly but surely, we are growing our channel, and soon we'll hit the 3,000 subscribers milestone. Maybe soon. Maybe in a couple of months. I'm optimistic. I'm super optimistic. Let's see this deck in action right now. Round 1, we are paired against SHAKELION. This is not our best start. Okay, this is much better. Let's skip it. What to put? I don't want to... This would be so amazing at 7. Okay, I'll put the Dredger back, because we'll probably cast Otherworldly Gaze, Brainstorm, and then go for winning. And this is something that I like when playing Blue Dredge. We donate our Dredgers immediately. We're gonna find them, I promise you. Let's keep 4 Otherworldly Gaze and a couple of Brainstorms. What? My opponent will go right into the discard phase? No, they have a polluted delta, okay. So we cast Otherworldly Gaze. Great. Komoiba and Hogak can be put into our graveyard. We will keep Careful Steady. If my opponent is a Reanimator deck, they can reanimate our Hogak. That's scary. Now we will draw our Careful Study. Let's play Undercity Silvers first. Okay, we have a Dredger, great. And now I will cast my Careful Study. We could try a Brainstorm here, but we have only 1 Dredger there. So let's be conservative here. Yeah, we couldn't hit a 3rd Dredger, so Careful Study was better. Now we can attack with our Narcomoeba. Oh, my opponent did concede the match, the game. Okay, this was super fast for Blue Dredge. Usually we win the game after that. So we know that my opponent has Polluted Delta, that's all. Considering we are on the draw, I think I prefer Unmask instead of Daze, but we can keep our Force of Wills. When we take Daze from our deck, we have less blue spells, so this is something to keep in mind. We have 12, 16, 20 blue cards. Is still good enough. I like to have at least 22 when I'm playing Force of Will, but 20 is solid enough, I mean. Let's try like that. This hand would be incredibly good with a land. Let's mulligan. Okay. I'll keep that. This can be too slow, unfortunately, but I will keep it. I'll keep Poxwalkers as a pitch to Unmask. My opponent plays Flooded Strand, cracks it, Volcanic Island, and Ponder. Maybe this is just Is It Delver? Or Grixis Delver. It can also be a combo deck. My opponent didn't shuffle. We draw. Another Careful Study, actually pretty good here. So, let's play Flooded Strand, and then I'll cast Unmask targeting my opponent. Show me your secrets. Yeah, it seems like a tempo deck. So, we'll take Daze here. We'll grab our basic island, and I'll cast a Careful Study here. Okay, nothing good. Force of Will is not especially good against Delver, but they can maybe find a Grafdigger's Cage or something. So, it is hard here. They didn't shuffle. Maybe they have a Graveyard Hate on top. Maybe. Let's discard Narcomoeba and 1 land. And pass the turn. This is a situation where Otherworldly Gaze would be amazingly good. Another land for our opponent and Grafdigger's Cage. So let's counter that. But now we need to top deck. My opponent can Brainstorm in response. Okay, we managed to counter Grafdigger's Cage. My opponent has a Lightning Bolt, Ponder and Brainstorm. Maybe. We need to draw something good. Land. Land is not the worst here. Let's play it. Especially if we draw Stink with Imp, we can cast it. I know it seems too narrow, but having Stink with Imps is actually solid against this deck. Okay, my opponent has Ponder. Now they will see 4 new cards. They don't want Lightning Bolt. We can still win this, but we are unfavored from this position. I would like to draw Stink with Imp or any enabler. We will draw. Unmask is no good. I will not show my Cephalic Coliseum here. Or maybe I do, because we can draw an extra... but my opponent can find Wasteland, and then we can crack Cephalic Coliseum. Yeah, let's keep our secrets here. I'll just pass a turn. My opponent will deal at least 6 damage, maybe 9. They couldn't shuffle their deck, so they probably have a Brainstorm or Lightning Bolt on top. We'll draw. Okay, Otherworldly Gaze is amazing. So let's start with it. Oh, they have a Pyroblast. They kept the card on top, of course. Flip Delver. Now we really need to be lucky with this Otherworldly Gaze here, because my opponent has 12 damage coming in. Yeah, we will lose, guys. My opponent definitely has Lightning Bolt, and this will kill us in a single backswing. Anyways, let's keep one Cephalic Coliseum on top, but yeah, we couldn't find what we needed. This Delver will flip to Pyroblast. Oh, maybe my opponent doesn't have Lightning Bolt anymore, because they did survey Lightning Bolt after that cantrip. Yeah, so maybe they don't have, and we still have a chance. Not a good chance, but we still have a chance. So they have a Pyroblast in their hand. Pyroblast can kill Delver at instant speed, just to exile our bridges. So let's draw 3, discard 3. Oh, my opponent has a Stifle. Great, great. Stifle, huh? We will do a second activation here with other Cephalic Coliseum, but after drawing 3, discard 3, we cannot win the game anymore. So let's concede. Oh, and we had Dredgers on top, so this could be our chance to come back from this bad position, this bad situation. Okay, being on the play, let's take Force of Will from our deck to include Daze and Dredge Return. Yeah, that's what we need. Now we are on the play and life is beautiful. I will keep this. Not the best, but not the worst. Let's play... Well, my opponent has a Stifle, so let's crack this now for a basic island. And let's pass a turn. My opponent plays Polluted Delta. Mishra's Bubble, okay. They are cracking Polluted Delta before cracking Mishra's Bubble. And Delver. So in response, we will cast Otherworldly Gaze. We don't want a second Daze here. We can keep Brainstorm. We could keep both cards, but I don't want to show my hand. Let's keep only Brainstorm here. And I will try to counter that Delver of Secrets. Okay, Delver is down. My opponent cracks Mishra's Bubble to see what we have on top. They will see our Brainstorm. And now I will just find my Surveil Land. Let's see what we have on top. Otherworldly Gaze can be put into our graveyard. My opponent draws, plays a land, and Ponder. Okay. Playing around Daze, you see? The mess we can do with an opponent's head when we have 2 Dazes in our graveyard. They didn't shuffle. Surgical Extraction targeting Daze! Really? Okay, you got this. We still have 1 Daze in our deck. So my opponent wants to resolve their next spell. Okay, they have a Grafdigger's Cage. That's actually not the worst. I know it seems bad, but it's not the worst. Let's cast our Narcomoeba and pass the turn. One thing that Blue Dredge, and I remember that pretty well, one thing that Blue Dredge can do against a Grafdigger's Cage is just stalling the game and winning anyways. Grief was an incredible tool in those scenarios, but not because you could cast Grief, of course, but you could evoke Grief to trigger our bridges. Okay, my opponent is not shuffling anything, and now they have a Darcy. We will draw Poxwalkers. Do I play it immediately? Yeah, let's play it. I believe my opponent has a counterspell at this point, at least one. Oh, and they will counter. They will use Force of Will to counter Poxwalkers. That's actually a win for us. They don't want Daze anymore. So we'll pass the turn. Let's press F6 here. No, I think not. We could have a Force of Will, right? No, my opponent saw our deck that we don't have forces anymore and we don't have Dazes anymore. So yeah, we can press F6 here. My opponent knows that we don't have counterspells left in our deck. They kept 1 card on top and they attack. We will not block and they pass a turn. And this is Grixis. My opponent can have Orcish Bowmasters here. So I'll cast Unmask targeting my opponent, exiling Golgari Thug. They respond with their own Brainstorm. Let's wait for this surveying here. And I'll cast my own Brainstorm in response. Okay, another Unmask and another Narcomoeba and Breach. Not the greatest hits. Let's put Unmask and Brainstorm on top. My opponent's Brainstorm will resolve. Okay, my opponent will kill my Narcomoeba. So this was probably their last spell. Narcomoeba down. Yeah, they have just a land. I'll cast my second Narco, and we pass the turn. We have a bridge in our hand. My opponent could have a Thoughtseize, that would be good. I will not block, and I will draw or Brainstorm. Let's cast it. Oh, they have a Pyroblast on top. Oh, that's bad. They don't want Wasteland. Okay, let's attack. Now we are in a bad situation. My opponent has a Flooded Strand in their hand, and now a Wasteland. Okay, we know that our opponent has 0 spells, but we have this Unmask on top, so let's attack. We need to draw something next turn. Our opponent just attacks, and I draw. Grave Troll. We could unmask ourselves to put Grave Troll, but this is not that good. Let's wait one more turn. Attacking with Narcomoeba, and my opponent attacks back with Darcy, and I have 2 now. One last turn to draw something relevant. We couldn't. GG. Alright, we are paired against Guzzisti, and we are on the draw. Without a Dredger, without Force. We have lands, but this is just too slow. Let's mulligan. Okay, this is slightly better. We don't have ways to put that Gogar Grave Troll in our bin yet, but let's keep it in our hand. I'll put Cabal Therapy on the bottom, and I'll have an answer and 2 Brainstorms. So you can dig for something better to solve this situation. My opponent has a Surveil land, probably a Tempo deck. They don't want Polluted Delta. We draw a land. So I think we'll play this land here, this fetch land I mean, because now we can find a Surveil land like our opponent. But let's do this on their turn. My opponent's turn, they draw, Underground Sea, Dark Retro, okay, Doomsday, let's say no. Playing around days, okay, we managed to counter my opponent's first Doomsday. We have Cephalic Coliseum here, so we need to reach threshold as soon as possible. Let's crack this, 2 cards in our graveyard, we want Undercity Sewers. We don't want Breach, so 3 cards in our graveyard, another Coliseum is good. Let's not reveal that yet to our opponent. I'll play a basic island, and let's pass the turn. My opponent draws basic island, so they cannot cast Doomsday. Consider. Okay, you can consider. They don't want Street Wraith. They are digging for a second Doomsday, probably, or maybe the 3rd black mana. Knight's Whisper. Okay, in response, let's cast Brainstorm. Okay, next turn we have enough cards to reach threshold. So let's put Narco and Careful Study on top. Knight's Whisper resolves. Lost Petal, and my opponent passes the turn. We have 4 cards in our graveyard. Let's reach threshold with this Careful Study. 2 Dredgers, great. I play Cephalic Coliseum. Let's pass the turn. This is our insurance, so my opponent cannot win the game this turn, and not even the next turn because we will have 2 Cephalic Coliseums, unless they have a plan B. My opponent has a draw step, another land, and passes. No, they stopped on their second main phase and passes the turn. We will dredge 6 here. We have a Hogak there. Let's play Cephalic Coliseum and pass the turn. No rush. We don't need to rush things here. We can force our opponent to mill 6 cards. I mean, to draw 6 cards. So if they ever resolve Doomsday, we just win the game. They cannot resolve Doomsday if we have 2 Cephalic Coliseums in play. So you can just slow dredge until we reach our Otherworldly Gazes and keep winning. We will dredge 6. And now we have an Otherworldly Gaze and Poxwalkers and Bridges and Cabal Therapy. So life is great. But we will not rush. Let's be patient. My opponent draws. And nothing, of course, because they cannot resolve a Doomsday here, and they know that. Maybe they have Force of Will, but I don't care. Everything I want is to put these Poxwalkers in play. So if they counter my Otherworldly Gaze, that's fine. Next turn we can cast Cabal Therapy and have 3 zombies and probably lethal in 2 turns. Okay, my opponent has Age of Autumn. It seems my spell is resolving. Okay, we don't want those cards. We can put everything into our graveyard. Now we will dredge. Let's attack first. Poxwalkers for the win. Dealing 3 damage to our opponent. And now our first Cabal Therapy. Sacrificing Poxwalkers. We have 3 bridges, and Poxwalkers enters the battlefield back. And this is completely hopeless. My opponent cannot do a single thing. We still have other Cabal Therapy there. Let's name Force of Will here, because I really want to resolve Hogak, and we are not afraid of Doomsday. Yeah, they only have Doomsday and IDD. So we can resolve Hogak. We can exile some cards here. Now we have Lethal next turn. And let's cast our Cabal Therapy. Why not? Sacrificing Poxwalkers. We don't need to sacrifice Hogak, because Poxwalkers enters the battlefield immediately. And I'm so not afraid of Doomsday that I would name anything here. But let's name Doomsday. Just to win in each and every way. We even have 3 Otherworldly Gazes there to be casted at the end of my opponent's turn. And on turn 7, my opponent concedes. This is what usually Blue Dredge consists on doing slowly but surely winning the game. Now we'll be on the draw. After sideboarding, my opponent can have so many bad things against us. but they also can have just a fast combo. So Daze is not good anymore. Let's sort this by mana value. Daze is not that good on the draw. Unmask is pretty good. We could include some bounce spells here, but I would not do anything different unless we see that our opponent has some graveyard hate, some hard graveyard hate, hard to deal with, like Leyline of the Void or Gravedigger's Cage. But usually what we want here on the draw is Force of Will. My opponent kept 7 cards. This is not the worst hand if we are on the play, but let's try something better on the draw. This is not that good either. Let's try 5. Okay, I will not mulligan this, let's keep it. But I'm not confident. We at least have a Goldfish here with Careful Study and Cephalic Coliseum. We need 1 extra land. My opponent plays a Scouting turn. Okay, no fast combo, not yet. We draw. Brainstorm is actually not the worst. Let's try our first Careful Study here. My opponent will definitely counter that. Unless they have Fairy Macabre or Surgical. If they don't, this is the moment where we'll see a Force of Will or Daze. Yeah, my opponent cracks Scouting turn in response for a Surveil land. They don't want Misty, and now they cast Daze to have that Surveil land back. Okay, my opponent draws. They play Underground Sea instead of the Surveil land. Okay, Dark Ritual and Doomsday. We cannot do anything. And this is the difference between being on the play or on the draw against a combo deck after sideboarding. My opponent had an answer and a combo. When we are on the play, sometimes we have an answer and our enablers to do our thing. That's why Force of Will is so good, because it can revert the advantage of being on the play. If your opponent is on the play and you have Force of Will, you can counter their first move and then try to win the game. Let's see our opponent's deck. They have this, Personal Tutor, Force of Negation, 1 Force of Negation. They have Thoughtseize, or they have Jace. This is something to keep in mind. Sometimes we can lose to a Jace instead of a Thassa's Oracle, and then we cannot mirror our opponent with a single Cephalic Coliseum. I'm not seeing any graveyard hate here. Let's see again. Yeah, after sideboarding, my opponent just kept a super fast combo approach. We have another Cephalic Coliseum. Let's cast Careful Study. Our only chance to win this game now is to do amazing things here with this Brainstorm, finding Cabal Therapies to force my opponent to discard. Okay, they had a last Force of Will there. So we'll cast Brainstorm now. Yeah, we will not win this game, guys. But let's see how my opponent will win. We have only 3 cards there. We don't have Threshold. Okay, my opponent has Brainstorm. That means they probably will win this turn. Unless they want to wait 1 more turn to play around something. Maybe they have a Thoughtseize on top. They need to be careful because they know we have counterspells. So maybe they are just playing around a counterspell here. They might have a Cavern of Souls. Yeah, Cavern is there. And that's it. They cannot win the game yet. And that's a bummer, because this could lead us to a win if we had Threshold. But we don't. My opponent plays a Surveil land. They don't want Age of Autumn. And they will cycle Street Wraith. For me, it seems that my opponent is learning the deck, or maybe learning Magic Online gameplay. Because usually Doomsday players are so fast, and my opponent is really thinking about each move. Or maybe just clicking here and there carefully. It doesn't seem like my opponent is super experienced with the deck or the platform. Platform, I mean, the software. So being on the play, Daze is better again. And maybe we don't need Hogak and 1 Poxwalkers. We can take a little bit of our threats. We can take 1 Brainstorm and playing a little bit more defensive. Let's try like that. Because against Doomsday, everything you want to have is an open Coliseum and forces Dazes. Okay, we have a Cabal Therapy here. Oh, yeah, my opponent is telling me that they are lagging a lot. Okay, that explains. Okay, I will mulligan that. It's not the worst, but we can do slightly better. Force and no lands. Let's mulligan again. Come on, deck. My opponent also had a mulligan to 6. Okay, this is interesting. Let's keep that. We don't need Breach. And we probably don't want Undercity Sewers here. Let's hope to resolve this Cabal Therapy. Cabal Therapy usually resolves. But my opponent has Force of Negation, so they could have double force here. We have a Daze to protect that Cabal Therapy. Okay, my opponent wants to counter my Cabal Therapy. I will counter your counter. That's the power of Daze in our deck. Not only to counter your opponent's play, but also to counter their first counterspell. And this will guarantee us Threshold on turn 3. Unless this Dredger unless this Dredger doesn't connect with a second Dredger. But let's hope it does. So Stink with Imp. And now I'll pass a turn. My opponent knows our hand. No, actually we'll have Threshold. I'm sorry, I was forgetting about Cabal Therapy. But anyways, we will not have Threshold on turn 2 because we need to play 2 lands. Having Threshold is so important in this scenario that even if this Sync Imp finds an Narcomoeba, if we don't connect with another Dredger, I'll say no to Narcomoeba. Yeah, we couldn't connect with other Dredger, but we have other World Gaze there, so it's a win. Let's play our land and pass the turn. So even if my opponent has a Doomsday here, they will need more stuff to win the game. Just a single Doomsday will not win the game. They need more mana to cast Jace. They need to build a different line to win the game when you have an open Cephalic Coliseum. Okay, they ponder, and my opponent passes a turn after playing a second land. We draw Careful Study, which is actually pretty good. As soon as we hit a third land, let's pass the turn here. My opponent draws and ponder again. Now they shuffle their library. Okay, no third land for our opponent. That's good. Let's cast our Otherworldly Gaze here. My opponent can counter that, putting us away of Threshold. But I think this is better than just top decking until we hit a land. Yeah, my opponent will move here. It seems our opponent needs something else to win this game. They don't have lands yet. So even if they... Oh, they have a Flusterstorm. Okay, no problems. I prefer them to cast Fluster on this Otherworldly Gaze than countering my Careful Study. No, I will not pay to resolve this spell. We draw. Another study. Great. So let's cast our first one. Okay, my opponent has a second force. And okay, let's cast our second Careful Study. We have Threshold, but we... Okay. Daze is not the worst here. And land is also not the worst. Oh, it's so weird. But I think we will keep Daze instead of the land. Let's keep Daze here. My opponent say that's a lot of studies. And now we have at least one layer of protection against my opponent's Doomsday. Okay, now we are back. We will dredge 5. No other dredgers, but we have Otherworldly Gaze. Let's pass the turn. We have Gaze and we have Poxwalkers and Cabal Therapy. So we are still good. No move from the other side of the table. We cast Otherworldly Gaze. If my opponent counters that, I'm even inclined to say, okay. Oh, they have a second Fluster, okay, or Daze will not counter that. You see, my opponent had 2 Flusters, 2 Forces, but not enough mana to cast Doomsday. Not yet. But now we have a clock. Poxwalkers enters the battlefield. That's why Poxwalkers is so good. You don't even need to resolve your spell. Okay, now I have another land. So let's attack first, and then I will cast Cabal Therapy targeting my opponent. Let's do this. I don't want to reveal that I have a Daze, and now we have a clock anyways. We don't need to dredge anymore. So Doomsday. Yeah, Doomsday and Night's Whisper and a Force of Negation. Let's play our land and pass a turn. Oh, my opponent is sending me a sad face. I think they don't have enough lands. I'll cast Daze here. I don't even need to use the alternative cost. Yeah, my opponent concedes. We won against Doomsday. One of the most powerful combo decks in Legacy. Let's go to our next match. I want to say thank you to all my patrons that you can see here on this page. Guys, you are awesome. And I can create content because of your continuous support. If you also want to help me as a content creator, please go there, check my Patron page. patreon.com/thedredgeguy. See you there. This is our next round against Wakami. And 2 Narcos on the draw. No. Let's try to do better. Mulligan. This is also not good. Let's go to 5. Okay. We need to draw something, but I will keep this being on the draw. Let's put Bridge. And what else? Therapy, probably. And okay, we have 1 layer of protection, maybe 2, but we still don't have ways to advance our own game plan. We couldn't find enablers. My opponent had Polluted Delta and pass. We draw. Narcomoeba. Okay, now we have 2 active forces, but still no ways to discard this Golgari Thug. Now my opponent plays a second land and ponder. Okay, interesting. Playing around Daze. And my opponent didn't shuffle and pass a turn. I cannot cast Daze because I don't have an island, but okay, we draw. Come on, deck, we need more than that. Well, in a couple of turns we can discard Golgari Throw, unless we need to force something. My opponent has a Tropical Island, a Sultai build, Brainstorm. Okay, Brainstorm resolves. Okay, Lotus Petal and Flooded Strand. Black, black, and black. Another Doomsday deck. Okay, let's counter that, exiling Narcomoeba. My opponent has another counter spell, exiling Daze. We have another Force of Will, exiling Daze. My opponent has another force, exiling Brainstorm. That's amazing. Okay, now my opponent probably will win. And interesting enough, we have a Cephalic Coliseum in play, but we cannot reach Threshold next turn, unfortunately. Well, let's see our opponent's deck. Okay, my opponent's build is different from our previous opponent. They have the One Ring, a Teferi Time Reveler, so is this a 4-color? They have Veil of Summer, another the One Ring. Yeah, they have the full playset of the One Rings. This is definitely different. We will draw. Narcomoeba is no good. Let's see how my opponent wins the game. This is a completely different deck. They will not win this turn. Okay, we draw. Undersea Deceivers, let's play it. We don't want to bridge from below. Let's put this into our graveyard. They will consider probably to win the game on the next turn. They kept the card on top. Okay, land, cycling the land, Street Wraith, Cavern of Souls. Yeah, playing around Force of Will, and casting Tessa's Oracle. Let's go to our second game. And you see, even without graveyard hate cards, sometimes we just have the advantage when they have counterspells. Unmask is pretty good here. We could try something similar to what we did in our last matchup when we were on the play. Taking 1 Hogak, 1 Poxwalkers, and 1 Brainstorm to include 3 Unmasks, and also keeping Forces and Dazes. So you have 10 control elements plus Cabal Therapy. Yeah, let's submit the deck this way. Unmask is pretty good if our opponent has Grafdigger's Cage with counterspells, for example. Yes, I'd like to play first. Okay, this is good. We have Daze and Force of Will. And I can play Otherworldly Gaze around Force of Negation. So I don't think we need to play around Wastelands, right? So let's start with Underground Sea this time. My opponent draws, play Tropical, and Ponder. So let's resolve or try to resolve Otherworldly Gaze. It resolves, we can... Do we keep Unmask on top? I don't think we will keep Unmask on top. Let's put everything into our graveyard. Because now we will reach Threshold, so we have 1 extra layer of protection against Doomsday. My opponent shuffles their library. They kept 7, right? Yeah, we both kept 7 cards. Oh, they have Fairy Macabre. Okay, you got this. I cannot counter Fairy. Now we'll draw. Misty, let's play 1 land and pass the turn. My opponent plays a land and ponders. Okay. Now they didn't shuffle their deck. So I'll crack Scouting Turn. Let's grab 1 Surveil land. Otherworldly Gaze, we can keep that, I guess, on top. This plus 3 cards is already a threshold, right? So let's play Cephalic Coliseum. And I'll pass the turn. I'll cast Otherworldly Gaze now in response to this fetch land. If my opponent has Force of Negation, I can cast Daze. Okay, no forces. I kind of want Careful Study and also the second force. Okay, if we have a Counterspell War here, I'll put 2 more cards in my graveyard. So 4, 5, 6. I still need... Yeah, I'll keep only Careful Study here. Let's put Narco and Force, but keep Careful Study on top. This Narco will enter the battlefield. Now we have 5 cards. And if we have a Counterspell War, we'll go back to 7 cards, and Cephalic Coliseum is active. My opponent has an Underground Sea. No Surveilling, huh? My opponent plays Tropical, and passes. That's okay. I will not cast Otherworldly Gaze yet, because we want to draw our first card. Let's value what we have. And now I think we can play Misty. Our opponent has Veil of Summers. So let's just attack with Narcomoeba here. Let's not be that curious to cast this Cabal Therapy. We don't need to rush things. I will pass a turn. So we are playing our land drops. We are hitting our land drops. We have spells, we have counter spells. We don't have dredges because our opponent had a Fairy Macabre, but we will hit them. Okay, my opponent has Scrubland, and Lotus Petal, and a 1 ring. Okay, my opponent has Veil of Summer. They definitely have Veil of Summer. Let's try to counter that. Okay, no Veil. That's good. That's actually great. So we are on our end step. They were just playing in around Daze. And now we'll grab our second Surveil land. And Grave Troll is exactly what we wanted. And now... Considering everything we saw, I'm inclined to crack the Cephalic Coliseum maybe next turn, not now. We can still keep it around in case my opponent resolves a fast Doomsday. But I don't think we'll hold it forever because my opponent can just... they have mana to cast the 1 ring and win after a Doomsday in the same turn. So let's dredge here. And if my opponent has a second Fairy Macabre, we can crack Cephalic Coliseum in response. Yeah, they have. So let's do this in response. I'll activate my Cephalic Coliseum. They would need another Fairy. No? Okay, so Grave Troll, and Dredge 4. We will discard the same Dredgers. And I don't need to save that Otherworldly Gaze from exile. We have others. Let's wait a little bit more because we don't have Poxwalkers yet. We'll Dredge 6. Okay, now we do. But we also have Cabal Therapy. So we'll start with Careful Study here. It is resolving. We'll Dredge 6 and Dredge 6. We can discard both Grave Trolls. Let's attack with our Narcomoeba first. And it is good to have access to 4 therapies. We have the full playset of therapies there, because now we can name everything we want. So we have 4 bridges. I will start with the 1 ring. No, just a Force of Negation. Interesting. Okay, so let's grab those cards, even if you don't want to take both of them. I think it's important, because my opponent can brainstorm away those cards. So let's take Lorien Revealed first, and then Force of Negation. My opponent can have another 1 ring on top, and then we cannot win the game next turn. But let's do our best here. Force of Negation. We don't need to cast our last therapy. We already have lethal, so let's keep it and we pass the turn. My opponent draws. And this is a fresh draw, right? I believe my opponent did shuffle last turn. Yeah, we won the second game. Let's go to our third game. This seems to be a slower build of Doomsday. My opponent usually will not have that combo kill on turn 1. Usually they will try to hit something else. Maybe. So maybe we can keep the same configuration here. Maybe you can keep Unmasks and Daisies even on the draw. Yeah, let's keep the same config. My opponent kept 7. I'll keep this. We have Coliseum, we have one Enabler, and we have Therapy and Daze. 2 therapies actually. Okay, my opponent starts with a Surveillant. They kept the card on top. And they play a lot of Spattle, so they can play around Daze. That's bad. Poxwalkers here. Now what? I say let's play into my opponent's counterspell. That's fine. He'll cast Careful Study. I could name Fairy Macabre with Cabal Therapy. You have a Force of Will now. Let's discard Inquilimp and 1 Therapy. And I'll pass the turn. My opponent draws, plays Flooded Strand and Fairy Macabre as expected. And that's it. We'll draw. Land. Land is good. We can cast a Cabal Therapy targeting our opponent first. Oh, they will move something here. They have Veil? If they have Veil, that's fine. It's our Force of Will and Daisies are more reliable to resolve next turn. Let's play Flooded Strand and pass the turn. This can be a Surveil land. This is turn 3. My opponent has Brainstorm, that's fine. Carpet of Flowers. Okay, resolves. That's it for now. So no third mana. But now my opponent has a Carpet, so they have a third mana. They don't need it now. We'll collect Flooded Strand for a Surveil land. Grave Troll. Yep. Ding ding ding. We'll dredge. And now let's play Cabal Therapy targeting my opponent. If they have a Veil of Summer, I will just counter. Not sure. No, they don't have. Let's name the 1 ring. Oh, 2 forces and a Brainstorm. Okay, nothing that great actually. We have 1 Force of Will. I think we need to cast this Otherworldly Gaze now to have a chance of winning the game. Okay, my opponent doesn't want to counter that. And we can put everything into our graveyard. And now we pass the turn. Considering that my opponent has double force and lots of mana, okay, 2 blue, Lotus Petal, and a 1 ring. We need to try to force that. At least my opponent will use one of their forces, but we need to do that. Yeah? Force of Will exiling Brainstorm, so my opponent still has 1 Force of Will. We will dredge 6, 1 Narco, 1 Gaze. Poxwalkers is in our hand. Now what? I can hold this Cephalic Coliseum 1 more turn, just to avoid losing by a Doomsday. My opponent has mana to cast Doomsday, but at the same time I think we need to push our zombies this turn, because my opponent can draw a Fairy Macabre or something. So I will not hold the Cephalic Coliseum. Let's not play defensively, let's play offensively here. I'll dredge, and let's dredge 5 again. Yeah, we will have so many zombies we can win next turn, unless my opponent hit a second the 1 ring, or if they can kill us in a single turn. We cannot cast Cabal Therapy targeting our opponent, but we can target ourselves. And that's what we can do now. We can threat lethal, damage. I don't need to discard the treasures here, that's fine. Just want to make zombies. 1 more therapy and we already have lethal. So we have lethal here, right? My opponent will go down to 17. And we have 12, 13, plus 6, 19 damage, yeah. So this is lethal next turn. My opponent needs to find another the 1 ring or win the game this turn. I'll press F6 here. My opponent knows that we don't have anything. They have all the mana they need, but do they have the spells to win the game? They start with Consider. They don't want Street Wraith. They draw with the 1 ring. 2 new cards, Pounder. So they still have 4 mana, maybe 5 if they find land here. They consider the match. We won, guys. We won against a different Doomsday build. Let's go to our next match. Alright, we are paired against Ancient Mirror. We are on the play. Okay, we don't have any answers, but we have 2 enablers and 2 lands. Let's skip that. Maybe our Careful Study will find us a Daze or a Force of Will. Oh, my opponent has a Force of Will, Exiling Pounder. So many blue decks. Combo decks and blue decks. Let's see if this is a Temple or also a Doomsday deck. Can you imagine 3 Doomsday decks in a row? Okay, Polluted Delta, Volcanic Island, okay. And Pounder. Maybe this is a Temple deck. So my opponent did exile a Pounder and now they have a second one. Not shuffling the deck. Emerald's Bubble, so this it seems like a Delver or a Temple deck. They know what we will draw. We draw Cabal Therapy. Let's try to resolve this Otherworldly Gaze here. Maybe my opponent has a Daze. Yeah, they do. And now we have 2 lands. Let's surveil something. Yeah, we have a Dredger in our graveyard now. This is something that I was missing playing Turbo Dredge for so long. It's just surveying and being lucky finding a dredger. I don't need to resolve a spell, I just put a dredger in my graveyard and that's it. Okay, my opponent has a Delver, and we'll dredge. We have an Archamoeba to block the Delver, great, and we have another dredger there, so we can just cast this Otherworldly Gaze here. Maybe we can find a Cephalic Coliseum or a Brainstorm. Only dredgers, but that's also okay. And we have a Cabal Therapy next turn. If I cast this Cabal Therapy now, I'm inclined to name Lightning Bolt. Let's do that. I don't think my opponent has Daisies or Forces anymore, so let's name Lightning Bolt to protect our bridges. No, Murktide and Questing Druid instead. I don't care too much about Murktide, sorry, but I do mind this card. This is an interesting choice. If my opponent casts Murktide next turn, it will be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 7, and then I need to find next Narcomoeba to block it. So usually I would leave Murktide there, but since we don't have any other enablers in our hand, and we'll slow dredge now, let's take Murktide from my opponent's hand instead of Seek the Beast, because that represents a new creature on the next turn, not now. And now we can pass the turn. See if this Delver flips. No. Good Delver, good Delver. Stay exactly like that. I would like to have another land here. Another land would be so good. Maybe you can find one with our next Otherworldly Gaze. So dredge 6, no gazes. If I cast Cabal Therapy targeting my opponent, they will just resolve Questing Druid, Seek the Beast. So we can cast Cabal Therapy targeting ourselves here to put more dredgers, but we don't need that. Let's just pass a turn here. Let's not blink yet. My opponent cracks Flooded Strand. If Cabal Therapy was an instant. And now they will Seek the Beast. They found Lightning Bolt and Mishra's Bubble. That's okay. And now they have a Force of Will. Now our Cabal Therapy has a good target. They cast Mishra's Bubble. They need to cast that Lightning Bolt if they want to have some value. And they can also cast Questing Druid in the same turn. Yeah, they play Tropical, Questing Druid, and probably Lightning Bolt after that. Yeah, so my opponent has Force of Will and 1 unknown card in their hand. They crack that Mishra's Bubble, they will go up to 3 cards now. They know what's on top of our library, but that it doesn't matter because we will dredge anyways. Dredge 6. Oh, nothing good yet. But now we can cast Cabal Therapy targeting our opponent. So let's do that. I will name Force of Will and another Delver. Next turn is interesting because we can dredge 4 instead of 6 just to guarantee that we can cast Cabal Therapy, returning Poxwalkers next turn, and having some zombies to block Questing Druid. This is something we can do. My opponent will not play Flooded Strand, so they can shuffle. Oh no, they play it. Okay, they have 1 unknown card. Yeah, let's do that. I know it's counterintuitive to not dredge 6 here, but let's dredge 4. And we have Hogak. Great, great, that's great. No days, please. If your last card is days, no days. Okay, I don't need to be curious here, right? At the same time, how many dredges do we have? Dredge 5, dredge 6. This Thug will die to put Narcomoeba on top. We'll have 3 dredgers. Okay, let's cast Cabal Therapy targeting our opponent here. This Narco will be put on top of our library. Both Poxwalkers enter the battlefield. We will have 2 zombies for our trouble. The right name here would be Lightning Bolt, but my opponent has red mana, and I don't think they have Lightning Bolt. I actually think that my opponent has a land or a counterspell there. So let's name Force of Will, because it doesn't make sense. My opponent will not do anything in response. Yeah, Mishra's Bubble, okay. So this was their draw for the turn. And now we can cast Hogak. Let's exile some lands and spells. And now we'll threatening lethal. Yeah, we have 18 power in play. My opponent is not threatening lethal unless they have a Lightning Bolt on top. And we'll have an Narcomoeba to block a Delver next turn. They don't have an instant on top. That's huge. Maybe they will crack Flooded Strand now, if they don't want that card. No, they still kept it. Dragon's Rage Channel. Okay, another threat. My opponent attacks, dealing 3 damage. And then they will cast Mishra's Bubble, triggering Darcy. Oh, they will attack with Delver? I'll gladly block. I don't need to protect my bridges anymore. Now we're down to 4. And now my opponent is threatening lethal next turn. They can block a Poxwalkers, and we will deal only 15 damage. But we have an Narcomoeba on top. They need a removal spell, a Lightning Bolt, or a bounce spell. Not sure if they have Brazen Brower in the main deck. And we need to survive to win. Just this turn. On Narcomoeba there, we even have another Otherworldly Gaze. Now what? I'll attack. But we don't have lethal, so I don't need to attack with everyone. Let's attack with you, you, and you. At the same time, if I threat lethal, my opponent, let's see, they can block 2 zombies. Yeah, we don't have lethal anyway, so let's attack with our large creatures. Hopefully we'll find another Narcomoeba on top. That would be amazing. We have another Otherworldly Gaze there. Oh, my opponent will block with Questing Druid. They know, they understand that they need flyers here to win. Now we'll cast Otherworldly Gaze, that Poxwalkers will enter the battlefield again. Let's find a second Narcomoeba on top, please. We still have 3 Narcomoebas in our deck. We have 22 cards. Oh, no Narcomoeba. So Do I even care about Careful Study? We already have lethal, right? My opponent can draw land and Force of Will here. So let's just put everything into our graveyard and pass the turn. We need to dodge a Lightning Bolt. My opponent will see the top card. It's nothing they want. So they will have 2 fresh draws here. One of them needs to be Lightning Bolt. I will just press F6 and hope for the best. And my opponent couldn't find a Lightning Bolt, and we won. We lead the match. But after sideboarding will be harder because my opponent probably has access to Grafdigger's Cage and maybe Surgical Extraction. So Unmask is good. I'm inclined to do almost the same thing we did against Doomsday. This is not as its best, but every now and then your opponent will start with Ponder, trying to hit something, shuffling or not, and then you have your Careful Study, your opponent has Force of Will, and you can daze your opponent's Force of Will on turn 1, and this is usually a game-winning move. So we could try to keep dazes, but at the same time, what to take from our deck? Because against blue mage with counterspells, we don't want to take too many cards from our deck. We could take 1 Poxwalkers. Hogaak is good in this matchup. I don't want to take Hogaak from our deck. Usually I would take Force of Will, but if my opponent has a turn 1 Grafdigger's Cage and you don't have forces, you feel so bad. I think I will do like the good old days last year, and I will just take forces out from my deck, and I will take 1 Poxwalkers. So I include 3 Unmasks and 2 bounce spells. And bounce spells are not that great against Delver because they can just counter your bounce spell, right? But sometimes you can even bounce a Delver or Murktide as a tempo play and win on the backswing. Okay, 3 Narcos is not what you want in your starting hand. Let's mulligan. A bounce spell, Cabal Therapy, no untapped black mana, but I think this is solid enough to keep. Let's put Nakomiba on the bottom. Did we see Wastelands? I'm not sure if my opponent has Wasteland. Maybe not the full playset. Okay, Volcanic Island and Delver. And Mishra's Bubble. Will they correct? Oh, a second Mishra's Bubble. So they can know what's on top of their library and what's on top of our library. Oh, they did target us twice. Okay, so they draw 2 cards. And we have a Careful Study now. That's a reason to go for it instead of Surveil Land. If my opponent has a counterspell, they have a counterspell, that's life. They don't. Great, so let's discard 2 Dredgers and pass the turn. I would love to hit 1 more land here, since we have double Cephalic Coliseum. 1 more untapped land would be awesome. Let's see my opponent's Delver. Rise of Progress. Really? So aggressive. We don't have that many lands. Well, it can still deal 4 or even 6 damage. But now we know about it. My opponent plays Darcy as a 1/1. Cracks Flooded Strand immediately, so they have something else. Brainstorm, okay. They don't want Pyroblast. Or maybe they do, but they want to put more cards in their graveyard to upgrade their Darcy. Now we need to think about our days. Do we need to activate it next turn? Because our strongest play is just cracking Cephalic Coliseum. Let's dredge. Yeah, if we activate Cephalic Coliseum now, we cannot activate it later. This is our last chance to activate Cephalic Coliseum now. If I play Undercity Silvers instead, I can crack Cephalic Coliseum later. But I think it's better to activate it now, since we know about 1 card in our opponent's hand. If we do have a Cabal Therapy here, we can even create some zombies this turn. I just don't want to put ourselves into a bad situation if my opponent has Wasteland. But let's guarantee our value here this turn. Dredge 6, you dredge 5, come on bridges, 1 bridge, and dredge 5. Okay, only 1 bridge, but we have 2 Nakomibas, I mean. Let's discard 1 Cabal Therapy and 2 Grave Trolls. And let's see if we will... No Poxwalkers yet, unfortunately. But let's see if we want to resolve every Cabal Therapy or not. Let's resolve our first Cabal Therapy. Since we know about Price of Progress, this is an easy task. Oh, they had 2 Price of Progress. Okay, and a Lightning Bolt and a Brainstorm. We definitely want to take Lightning Bolt to protect our bridges. Lightning Bolt. And I think we will take that Brainstorm too. We can have 1 less zombie now. I think it's okay. I don't want to let my opponent see 4 new cards. So they are empty-handed, but they have 2 creatures, and we have only 1 zombie. We still have cards in our hand, and if they don't find a Wasteland, we can crack Cephalic Coliseum in a couple of turns. They attack only... Oh, they will attack with Darcy? That's fine. I will gladly block. It's fine. We can exchange 1 bridge for 1 Darcy. Now they have a Murktide. We can bounce that. Yeah, they have a Murktide. We can bounce Murktide Regent. So let's dredge first. Oh, now we have a Poxwalkers. We cannot bring it back yet. Let's see what we have on top. Maybe it's an Nakomiba. It's an Unmask. We don't want that now. Let's put this into our graveyard. And let's bounce Murktide as a tempo play. And now we can even attack with our 2/2 zombie. And this Murktide will be smaller. My opponent can cast it again as a 4/4. Oh, and now we even have Daze. So unless my opponent has another land, we can even counter Murktide. I'm not sure if we need to, because we have Cephalic Coliseum here. This is an interesting choice. We can counter Murktide. How many Narcomoebas we still have? We still have Other Bridge, but we don't have that many therapies. Again, I know this is counterintuitive, but I will counter this Murktide because we are low on life. I'll try to counter. My opponent can have their own days. But I think we must try to counter that. Yeah, it did resolve. Because now we have more time and we can dredge 6 and dredge 6 again and win the game anyways. I like that approach because in the past, I lost games like this. Everything seems to be solved. Your opponent just has a Murktide, but then they have a Pyroblast for your Narcomoeba and attack for lethal. You know, this can happen. Let's surveil something good. Breach. Breach is good. And now if my opponent attacks, we'll block and we will have so many zombies. So let's attack here. This is something to observe in your deck during the game. Your game is progressing and then you must observe, okay, I have only one Cabal Therapy left. I don't have Dredge Return. Or maybe I do. I'm not sure if we included the Dredge Return. I'm not sure. No, we don't have Dredge Return. So we only have one Cabal Therapy left in our deck. So we will not threat lethal with a single therapy. And now we will threat lethal because we have a Cephalic Coliseum. So now we can do it. Now we even have a Cabal Therapy here. Instead of cracking Cephalic Coliseum, I think I would just cast Otherworldly Gaze. That's better. Yeah, we don't need to crack Cephalic Coliseum anymore. Everything is happening according to the plan. My opponent will counter. Oh, my opponent will destroy their own Delver just to get rid of our bridges. So you see, my opponent had a removal spell or a lightning bolt to target us. And what do you have? Another Poxwalkers Days and another land. Let's put Poxwalkers. Do we still have another land to be fetched here? Let's see, 1 underground and 2 basic islands. Let's see our graveyard. 1 island, 1 underground. No, we don't have other lands there. So we can put... I don't think we need to keep days at this point. My opponent is Hellbent. So yeah, we can cast a Cabal Therapy here just to put the other Poxwalkers in play. And I'll have lethal in 2 turns. My opponent, let's name Sticker Goblin. My opponent doesn't have creatures or hasty creatures, so we can even attack with Narcomoeba. And now they crack Polluted Delta. No surveillance. Okay, they have a Darcy. Let's draw. Full study, okay. Now let's see. If we attack here, we don't even need Hogak anymore. I can keep Narcomoeba as a blocker. If we attack here just with Poxwalkers, I don't think my opponent will block. If they do, we can just bring them back. Yeah, I think it's better to just push damage instead of resolving Hogak. So let's attack here. And I will... Price of Progress is an instant. Yeah, we don't need to do anything here. Let's just pass a turn. We have lethal on our next turn. We have a blocker. We can crack Cephalic Coliseum if my opponent plays Price of Progress. Yeah, my opponent concedes, and we won! Another match! My opponent had some weird choices like Price of Progress against us. Maybe they couldn't hit their Graveyard Hate. But well, we won. Let's go to our next match. Alright, let's see if this interesting starting hand can win another match or another game. We are playing against JDoherty. And let's see. We have Force of Will, we have Cephalic Coliseum, we have lands, we have Brainstorm. My opponent plays Flooded Strand, Volcanic Island. Oh, another Delver. Alright. I will not force Delver of Secrets, of course. Oh, another Cephalic Coliseum. That means... Okay, let's play Polluted Delta and pass the turn. Let's see if this Delver flips first. Okay, it didn't flip. So it is not an instant. My opponent can draw this card. Now they have a Darcy. That's fine. They play Wasteland. Okay, so this will be a basic island. Now we know. I wanted to take Underground Sea here, but now we know that we need basics. So let's grab a basic island and cast Otherworldly Gaze. My opponent has Daze. Okay, they don't want Force of Will, so let's fight over this Otherworldly Gaze. I'll counter it with my own Force of Will. Yeah, I do want to resolve that. And my opponent doesn't, so they use their own Force of Will. Okay, we can try again next turn. We'll draw a Force of Will. Alright. Let's do it immediately before my opponent activates that Wasteland. Okay, now we have what we need. Let's keep Brainstorm and Careful Study on top, our good enablers. So this is a good sequence that usually we have when playing Blue Dredge. Otherworldly Gaze, then Careful Study, and finally Brainstorm. Sometimes on turn 2. Okay, Delver didn't flip, which is good. My opponent takes that opportunity to destroy our Cephalic Coliseum, but that's fine. And since we know that my opponent doesn't have counterspells now, maybe they have a Daze, a remaining Daze, I'm not sure. Okay, they pressed F6, so we'll dredge 6. No, we had a Brainstorm on top. Oh, I'm an idiot. Okay, that's fine. I forgot. I was just too excited to resolve this Careful Study. Okay, we have 1 Therapy, 2 Bridges. I think that's fine. Let's just discard our Dredgers. Because this was a mistake. I got too excited here. Because if this was our play, I could just play Undercity Deceivers instead of playing Cephalic Coliseum. But that's okay. We have 2 blockers and 1 bridge. Let's hope for no new Wastelands. Is this Delver finally flipping? Yeah, now they have a Brainstorm. I imagine they will cast it, yeah. They don't want a Scouting turn. They probably want a Wasteland. It was so stupid. I still think we are favored, even if my opponent has a Wasteland here. They have. Okay, that's life. You attack with Delver? Let's block. Let's kill this Delver and gaining 2 zombies after that. It's fine to lose a single bridge. And my opponent concedes. Yeah, maybe that Brainstorm wasn't that good enough. Okay, now against Delver. The previous round I included Unmask, right? And we'll say bye-bye to Force of Will. We include 2 into the Flood Maul and take 1 Poxwalkers. Let's try like that. I'm not sure, guys. I'm just getting back to Blue Dredge after several months playing Turbo Dredge. But my gut tells me that you don't want to keep Force of Will against Delver, even if they have a turn 1 Grafdigger's Cage. This is not good. My opponent kept 7. Let's mulligan. I don't like that hand. We need to resolve this Brainstorm and we need to have something good on top. But if we find that this hand can be good, we at least have 1 basic island. Okay, let's try this. We can put Nakumiba back because we don't have Force of Will anymore. We don't need Blue Peach. My opponent has Flooded Strand, Grixis, Volcanic, and Delver. Alright. We'll draw. Careful Study. That's so much better because now our hand makes some sense. We can counter that Force of Will with these. And now having a single land is not that bad. Maybe you can even find something extra here. Just an Otherworldly Gaze, but that's fine. Let's discard 2 Dredgers and pass the turn. My opponent did exile a Brainstorm there. Now they have a Lightning Bolt and a Wasteland, but we have a basic. We will Dredge. Have an Arco here. Yes? I think my opponent will try to hit an Arco, so I'll just play a land and pass. And when they hit an Arco with Lightning Bolt, I will cast Brainstorm. No? If they don't, I'll just cast Otherworldly Gaze. Okay, they have another land. Okay, let's block and try to resolve Brainstorm. We'll Dredge. We have 1 bridge. We'll Dredge again. And we'll Dredge again. Only 1 bridge. Let's see if my opponent... Let's put another bridge on top. And we have Dredgers there. Let's put Bridge and Cabal Therapy on top. So we can reuse them after that. Let's see if my opponent wants to kill their own Delver and response here. I don't think that would be a great idea. My opponent can give us 1/2 zombie. That's fine. But some players are really pushy with their Lightning Bolts to kill their own creatures just to avoid giving us something. Because now we'll have the other bridge. We'll Dredge 6. Yeah, another Narco. So my opponent needs to... Oh, my opponent concedes. My opponent is tired of our business. And we did a 4-1 in this league. So yeah, it felt so great to play Blue Dredge again after this window playing exclusively Turbo Dredge. And as I keep saying, any Dredge deck is well prepared to win in this metagame. Especially if we are going back to Tempo Blue Soup as we were 1 year ago. Let's talk a little bit about our deck. So let's talk about our deck. And I'm not sure if I told you at the intro, 1 year ago we also had no access to Surveil Lands yet. Surveil Lands were printed this last year. So I'm including 2 Surveil Lands in this new build. And as we saw here, Surveil Lands can be really good in Blue Dredge. We don't have time to play a tapped land when you're playing Turbo Dredge, but playing Blue Dredge you have this time. And sometimes it's everything you want. You want to maybe even surveilling a Dredger to your graveyard so you can save your Brainstorms and Careful Studies just as pure enablers, as they should be. Well, Blue Dredge was an amazing experience again, and I actually was pretty happy with this preliminary build here. Before our league, I wasn't sure about this configuration here with 3 Poxwalkers. I was inclined to keep at least 1 Ichorid, because Ichorid can be also good in a slower deck. But we never felt the absence of Ichorids here. Since we have 4 Otherworldly Gazes and also 4 Cabal Therapy and 1 Hogak, we have enough flashback spells to bring Poxwalkers back to the battlefield. Forces and Daisies were pretty good in this league. Our mana base was also solid, our enablers. Hogak sometimes is not needed. We could think here, for example, if you're playing in a heavily white metagame with Caracas and Source to Plowshares, maybe you, Solitude, you could exchange Hogak for maybe a Dread Return if you want to include something else in your sideboard. But Hogak is still solid. We could even play an Ichorid here instead of Hogak, or even a 4th Poxwalkers. If your metagame is also full of surgical extractions, maybe you want 1 or 2 Ichorids instead. So you could take 1 Hogak and 1 Poxwalkers and include 2 Ichorids here, just to split your threats a little bit, so your opponent will never leave you without threats. You will always have something to bring back to the battlefield. Our sideboard worked great. We didn't need too much of our sideboard in this league, but even Into the Flood Maul was actually great against the Delver deck. Unmasks were actually solid. I was a little bit skeptical about this card before this leak, but Unmask was solid, more solid than I was previewing. So this is probably a great starting point for Blue Dredge at 2025. But what do you think? Please let me know here in the comments below. Click the like button, subscribe, leave a comment below before we are starting a new phase here on our channel. We will start to have more and more content this year. See you soon. Bye.